Let's get right into it. Number 10. Feeling it makes it true. Here's a fun way your brain betrays you daily. You feel embarrassed, therefore something embarrassing must have happened. You feel guilty, therefore you must have done something wrong. You feel like everyone in the coffee shop is judging your jacket, therefore they absolutely are. This is called emotional reasoning, and it is exactly as dangerous as it sounds. Your brain treats feelings like sworn testimony. No cross-examination, no evidence required, just pure emotional vibes presented to your consciousness as hard fact. Psychologists have studied this pattern extensively because it underpins anxiety, depression, and roughly 80% of arguments that start with, "I just feel like you don't care." The cruel irony is that emotions evolved to give you quick information about your environment. Fast, efficient, sometimes accurate. But your modern brain is running ancient software in a world that requires nuance, and the software keeps filing false reports. Feeling something intensely does not make it objectively real. Your nervous system has been lying to you with total confidence since approximately birth. Number 9. Sadness rewrites your memories. Imagine scrolling through a mental photo album of your entire life, except someone went through it first and removed everything good. That someone is your current emotional state. Research in cognitive psychology has confirmed that when they're sad, your brain preferentially retrieves sad memories. Not because those memories are more accurate or important, but because your brain is lazy and loves thematic consistency. It wants everything to match, so you're having a rough Tuesday, and suddenly you remember every rejection, every failure, every awkward thing you said at a party in 2014, all parading through your head like a greatest hits album nobody asked for. Meanwhile, the good memories are still there, they're just buried under a mood-congruent pile of emotional rubble. This phenomenon, called mood-congruent memory retrieval, explains why bad days feel like your entire life is bad. It's not. Your brain is just running a very selective slideshow and calling it a documentary. You're not reviewing your life, you're reviewing your current emotional state dressed up as your life. Number 8. Anxiety disguised as intuition. Some people call it a gut feeling, a whisper from the universe, an inner knowing. Sometimes it is, but a lot of the time what you're calling intuition is just anxiety wearing a spiritual costume and asking to be trusted. Here's how the scan works. You feel uneasy about a decision, maybe a new job, a relationship, a trip. The unease feels deep and wise, like it's coming from somewhere ancient and knowing, so you listen to it, you back out, you play it safe, and you call it following your gut. What actually happened is your amygdala, the brain's alarm system, detected something unfamiliar and fired off a threat signal. Not because the situation was dangerous, but because it was new, uncertain, or different from your usual patterns. Anxiety and intuition produce nearly identical physical sensations: racing heart, tight chest, vague dread. The difference is that intuition is usually calm and clear, while anxiety is loud, sticky, and insistent. Your gut isn't always wise. Sometimes it's just scared of change and dressed up nicely to seem philosophical about it. Number 7. Anger's convenient blame machine. Anger is the emotion that never shows up alone. It always brings a suspect. You're angry, so someone must be at fault. Something must have caused this. A person, a situation, a driver who merged incorrectly 3 exits ago. What makes anger uniquely deceptive is that it is an outward-pointing emotion by design. It evolved to mobilize you against external threats. But in the modern world, plenty of anger is generated internally by fatigue, hunger, shame, or emotional overwhelm, and then immediately projected outward onto whoever is closest. Psychologists call this displacement. Your body calls it totally justified. You had a miserable day, your boss was dismissive, and now your partner's perfectly normal question about dinner feels like a personal attack. The anger is real, the target is borrowed. The scary part is that anger comes with built-in certainty. When you're angry, you feel right, completely, unquestionably, morally right. And that righteous feeling is almost entirely manufactured by the emotion itself to ensure you keep expressing it. Basically, anger hired its own PR team inside your skull. Number 6. Love inflates strangers into heroes. The early stages of romantic attraction are, neurologically speaking, a mild psychosis, not a metaphor, a clinical observation. When you're falling for someone, your brain floods with dopamine and norepinephrine, suppresses activity in your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for critical thinking, and starts constructing a version of that person that is significantly better than the actual person. Their flaws get minimized, their habits get romanticized, the fact that they chew loudly becomes endearing, the fact that they never never text back becomes mysterious. You are not seeing them. You are seeing a detailed hallucination your brain built using about 40% real information and 60% projected idealism. Psychologists call this idealization, and it is not a bug in the romantic experience. It is a feature. Evolution needed humans to bond quickly and deeply enough to cooperate and raise offspring, so it built in a temporary perception filter that makes potential partners look amazing. The problem is, nobody tells you the filter is on, so when it lifts later and you see the actual person, it feels like they changed. They didn't. Your brain just stopped lying to you, which, honestly, is kind of rude timing. Number 5. Fear exaggerates every threat. Your brain has a negativity bias so powerful it should come with a warning label. When humans lived in environments where one mistake could mean death, this was useful. Overestimate a threat, survive. Underestimate it, become part of the food chain. The problem is that same system is now running inside a person who is afraid of sending emails. Fear inflates threats through a process of cognitive distortion called catastrophizing, and it does it automatically, instantly, and convincingly. You mess up a presentation and your brain presents worst-case scenarios as the most likely outcome. You'll be fired. You'll be humiliated. You'll never recover professionally. Meanwhile, the realistic outcome is that your coworkers already forgot about it because they're busy catastrophizing about their own presentations. Fear is a terrible statistician. It assigns high probability to low probability disasters because the cost of ignoring a real threat historically outweighed the cost of being occasionally paranoid. So your brain just kept the paranoia forever as a default. And now you're lying awake at 2 a.m. convinced that a slightly awkward text message you sent 3 days ago has permanently altered someone's opinion of you. Number 4. Guilt performs but rarely fixes. Guilt might be the most convincing liar in the emotional lineup because it feels productive. It feels like conscience. It feels like you are a good person who recognizes when they've done wrong, and that recognition alone should count for something. And sometimes guilt is legitimate and useful, nudging you toward apology, repair, and change. But a surprising amount of guilt is performative, a psychological theater your brain stages to feel like you're handling something without you actually having to handle anything. You feel terrible, therefore you've suffered, therefore perhaps the moral debt is settled. It isn't. Researchers distinguish between guilt, which focuses on the behavior, and shame, which focuses on the self, and both have a tendency to spiral into rumination that feels like accountability but produces zero actual behavioral change. You replay the mistake, you feel awful about it, you feel awful about feeling awful, you're exhausted, nothing is different. True guilt should function like a compass, pointing toward action. What most people experience instead is guilt as punishment, self-inflicted, emotionally exhausting, and completely disconnected from making anything better. Your conscience is not absolution, it's just really good at sounding like it is. Number 3. Loneliness distorts other people. Loneliness doesn't just feel bad. It actively changes how you perceive social situations, and the changes are not in your favor. Studies from the University of Chicago found that chronically lonely people develop a hypervigilance to social threats. They start reading ambiguity as rejection. They interpret neutral expressions as hostile. They expect interactions to go badly before they've started, which creates a kind of social pessimism that makes the loneliness worse. It's a trap with a mirror inside it. The emotion designed to signal that you need more connection simultaneously makes connection harder to initiate and maintain. Loneliness whispers that nobody wants to be around you, and then watches you avoid the situations that would prove it wrong. What's particularly dark is that loneliness can make you remember past social interactions more negatively than they actually were. So your brain isn't just making the present worse, it's retroactively editing your social history to justify its current miserable hypothesis. The feeling of being alone convinces you that being alone is the truth about you, when really, it's just an emotional state, doing what emotional states do, lying confidently, until you believe it. Number 2. Happiness makes you reckless. Everyone spends considerable energy trying to feel happier, which makes sense because happiness feels good and misery does not. What nobody mentions is that elevated positive mood has its own set of cognitive distortions, and they are genuinely dangerous. When you're in a good mood, your brain becomes overconfident, underestimates risk, and processes information more superficially. This is called the affect heuristic, and it means that happy people make faster, sloppier decisions because everything feels fine, so surely everything is fine. You're in a great mood, You make a spontaneous purchase you can't afford, agree to commitments you can't keep, skip the fine print because vibes are good. Positive emotion signals to the brain that the environment is safe, which reduces analytical vigilance. Historically useful, in a modern financial or social context, occasionally catastrophic. Happiness also makes you more susceptible to persuasion, which is exactly why every advertisement ever made features smiling, attractive people doing enjoyable things. They're not selling a product. They're borrowing your good mood and renting it back to you as trust. Feeling great isn't neutral. It's a different flavor of cognitive vulnerability. Number 1. Every emotion claims to be permanent. Here's the biggest lie your emotions tell you, and they tell it constantly, about every single feeling you've ever had. When you're anxious, it feels like you will always be anxious. When you're heartbroken, the heartbreak feels like a geological feature of your personality now. When you're embarrassed, the embarrassment feels like it has weight and permanence, like it is now a fact about who you are. Psychologists call this emotional permanence bias, the tendency to experience current emotional states as if they are fixed rather than temporary. Your brain has extraordinary difficulty imagining itself feeling differently than it currently does. This is partly why people in crisis believe things will never improve. It's not pessimism, it's a perceptual limitation built into how emotions function in the brain. The cruel elegance of this lie is that it makes every difficult emotion harder to survive, and every good one feel fragile. You're happy, but it feels like it could disappear. You're miserable, and it feels like it never will. Both predictions are wrong. Emotions are not destinations. They're weather. They move through. They change. They end. Even the ones your brain swears are permanent, especially those ones. That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.